Chapter 1156, Opening of the Remains. Without exception, the remains that Lu Shu and the rest encountered would display a strange phenomenon. That was because the source of strength of the remains conflicted with the current world. Yet now, Lu Shu and the rest realized, to their horror, that there was more than one strange phenomenon for this remains. Magma, daylight flames, and now, wild wind. Initially, Lu Shu thought that the daylight flame and magma came from the same source and so did not pay them much attention. Now, it seemed like it was not as simple as what he had imagined. The powerful daylight flames appeared from the strange remains. Lu Shu thought, if the remains was a treasure that was intentionally buried, then the appearance of the daylight flames indicated the end of the remains. That was because the remains had a limit and could not be opened indefinitely. The wild wind blew for a long time. While struggling, everyone in the campsite watched Lu Shu stand in the center of the campsite as he pondered, seemingly unaffected by the wind. It felt terrible to suffer while watching how someone else was unaffected. When the wind finally stopped, Lu Shu said, "Let's pack up and walk further into Yellowstone National Park." Actually, he was not planning to look for anything inside the park. He needed to discuss something with Chen Zuan and the rest, and it was not convenient for him to do so with a lot of people around. Moreover, many people in the campsite had already figured out his identity. He did not like to be the center of attention. The four of them continued trekking in the park. Chen Zuan, after keeping silent for a while, suddenly said, "Aren't we informing that person that we are leaving?" Lu Shu suddenly stopped and the silence was deafening. Lu Shu slapped the back of Chen Zuan's head and said, "I told you to wash the dishes." Chen Zuan was stunned. Why was Lu Shu bringing this matter up after such a long time? Chang Qiuqiao empathized with Chen Zuan. "Brother Zuan, after we go back, I will buy you life insurance and put my name as the beneficiary. In that case, your sacrifice won't be in vain." Chen Zuan was mad. "Chang Qiuqiao, I didn't expect you to have your eye on a dead person's money." Chang Qiuqiao casually said, "So you do know that you will become a dead person if you continue being like this." "Stop it." Lu Shu waved his hand speechlessly and continued walking. "I need to tell you two something serious. The remains is extraordinary. In fact, I feel like it is a mistake bringing the both of you along with me." Chen Zuan and Chang Qiuqiao looked at each other. Was it that exaggerated? Although the life forms in the remains were powerful, they seemed to be very powerful initially and was at the peak of recovery. If the remains were able to threaten two rank 1 individuals, then it would have been exaggerated. After all, even if they could not win the fight, they could flee. Moreover, they had Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu with them. "Brother Shu, don't scare us," mumbled Chen Zuan. "I am not scaring you." Lu Shu shook his head. "I am not worried about Xiaoyu since she has the spirit of two masters. However, the two of you are different. Don't forget, the position where one entered the remains is randomized and we were not together when we first entered. Moreover, as the area of the remains enlarged, it had been almost a year since the remains were opened. Who knows how the interior of the remains look like? Unfortunately, we are not able to enter and contact each other immediately," said Chen Zuan, "or else, the four of us don't have to be afraid of anything." Lu Shu looked at Chen Zuan with a serious look. "Don't let your guard down. After overcoming so many challenges, we can't afford to let a mishap happen now." Lu Shu did not mention about how he felt as though there was something waiting for him in the remains. It was either a creature or an unimaginable treasure. If Cloudy and Tiger Ji were around, Lu Shu could ask them if they knew what was hiding in the remains. However, both of them went back to the Luniverse and brought 5,000 packs of hot pot soup base with them. At this moment, he heard footsteps behind him. Lu Shu turned around and saw Coral walking over with the deities. Coral's cousin and some others were carrying bags and they looked like they were trekking too. Lu Shu and the rest did not know how to react. Then, Coral's cousin said rudely to Lu Shu, "Move, why aren't you moving? We are following you guys." Lu Shu was speechless. He looked at Coral, only to realize that Coral was enjoying the scenery and acted as though she did not see Lu Shu. At this moment, the only thing in Lu Shu's mind was, what did Lu Xiaoyu and Coral talk about? What were the deities planning? Lu Shu looked at Lu Xiaoyu suspiciously before turning to Coral. He felt that something was amiss. With a large group of deities following him, they were extremely eye-catching. Since the morning, they had walked for over 100 kilometers. Lu Shu's destination was the core sector near the strange phenomenon of the remains. Since he had to enter the remains anyway, he would rather take the initiative and enter first, so as to secure a superior position. They witnessed many commotions along the way. The practitioners made a commotion everywhere they went. Some of them were brazen in the Yellowstone National Park. Some large organizations also had ulterior motives. Within the span of 2 hours, Coral's cousin and Chinzuan had already stopped 2 instances of assault on female practitioners. Lu Xiaoyu said indignantly, "These people deserve to be chemically castrated." "Am I right, Lu Shu?" Lu Shu said after a while, "No, they should be physically castrated." Hearing this, Chinzuan and Cheng Qiuqiu had goosebumps. One was more cruel than the other. Coral smiled and kept silent behind them. Behind Lu Shu, she suddenly felt that things were going pretty well. At this moment, it began to fog up. Everyone had been to the remains and knew that the fog was the door that led to the remains. Everyone looked at Lu Shu. At such moments, their innate reactions reflected who they thought had the most authority. A commotion broke out in Yellowstone National Park and the practitioners rushed over towards where Lu Shu and the rest were. Lu Shu smiled. "Everyone has been in the remains before, let's not waste time. I hope that everyone can return safely." After that, Lu Shu walked into the fog. Everyone followed his footsteps. Meanwhile, Lu Xiaoyu turned around to look at Coral and without any words, they seemed to have reached a common understanding. Lu Shu did not turn around to look at anyone. It was a solo journey through the remains. Everyone had to experience the unknown by themselves. To Lu Shu, he had to face some things by himself. He wanted to cut open the layer of fog by himself. Chapter 1157, Strange Phenomenon of the Remains. A huge cloud of fog spread open across Yellowstone National Park. Someone made a live broadcast of this scene on a helicopter. They were ordinary people and did not dare to get too close to the remains. However, the camera captured everything. A beautiful, young female reporter said to the camera, "The practitioners have gathered in Yellowstone National Park for the opening of the remains. Below, we can see the practitioners rushing towards the fog the remains have produced. That is where the door leading into the remains is located." The blades on the helicopter made loud noises, but the reporter continued, "Based on our understanding, there hasn't been any opening of remains for the past 9 months. In the past, the opening of the remains always creates a huge commotion for the practitioners as there was believed to be a sea of treasures in the remains. Initially, we thought that the Phoenix Society would refuse to allow the practitioners from the rest of the world to enter, however, evidently after the battle on the tiger's back, they no longer have the ability to do so. We tried to interview Nie Ting, the person in charge of the Heavenly Network, to find out if they would send anyone over. However, the Heavenly Network rejected our interview," the reporter roared in the wild wind. "However, we have received news that the 9th Heavenly King Lu Shu has appeared in Yellowstone National Park. His power cannot be underestimated. We believe that the Heavenly Network would be the biggest winner this time." In this era, media coverage was everywhere because people were fond of gossip. Ordinary people were definitely curious about the cultivation realm. Therefore, some media companies placed their focus on this group of people even though they were dangerous. To the media, there were benefits at the center of attention. That was because the extent of outreach and sales of publications determined the salary of a media personnel. The reason behind talking about Lu Shu was that Lu Shu was the center of attention. Even Lu Shu was unaware about it himself, But he had many supporters and fans from all over the world. It was like a famous football or basketball player, as long as one was powerful enough, people would idolize them. Moreover, Lu Shu was too mysterious. Not only did he own a dragon, but he was also the ruler of the battlefield. It sounded extremely charismatic. Moreover, there were too many events that involved Lu Shu. Besides Lu Shu, Nieting also had a lot of fans overseas. In the past, Lu Shu thought that there were no other ordinary people in Yellowstone National Park. However, he came to this conclusion based on the mindset of an ordinary individual in China. He neglected the possibility that foreigners might have a different mindset as they loved seeking thrills. Therefore, Lu Shu and the rest did not expect many people to rush over to Yellowstone National Park. On one hand, they did not feel that the remains would affect them as they did not have to enter the remains. On the other hand, there was already a group of individuals overseas who loved to take risks. In fact, many ordinary people felt proud for returning safe and sound after entering the remains. One could only conclude that there were all types of people in the world. Lu Shu felt that this was a part of the series, why there was so little foreigners. However, at this moment, the helicopter pilot suddenly pulled the cyclic of the helicopter and said, "Sit tight." The reporter looked out in shock and was stunned. The white fog had suddenly spread towards them. The speed of the spreading fog was too fast. It was so fast that the helicopter was swept into the fog before it could avoid it. The live broadcast stopped. Those who were watching the live broadcast were stunned. Did the reporter get swept into the remains? They could only see a white screen and loud noises on screen. It took 2 minutes for the screen to change to that of the broadcasting studio. Evidently, the broadcasting company did not expect this to happen too. The news anchor in the broadcasting studio said nervously, "The fog at Yellowstone National Park continuously spread. We have lost contact with our reporter and none of us have any idea about what is happening in Yellowstone National Park. Please stay away from Yellowstone National Park." However, it was too late. Many ordinary people had already entered Yellowstone National Park, and judging from the speed of the spread of the fog, it would be too late for them to escape after seeing the fog. However, nobody knew how long the spread of the fog would last and how big the area would be. In less than 5 minutes, someone posted on the internet, claiming that the fog had stopped but Yellowstone National Park had vanished. That meant that the fog had completely shrouded the entirety of Yellowstone National Park, including some of the towns nearby. Too many ordinary people were involved. This caused plenty of others to feel fear. Up to today, this was the first time the fog of the remains had spread so far that it was beyond imagination. Countless media reported about this live event as though the end of the world was near. At this moment, in the Longmen Fortress, Hao Qichao immediately passed the information to Nie Ting when he received it. Shi Xuejin read the news with Nie Ting and was astonished. Such a big area. Did anyone calculate if the fog and the area of the remains were proportional to each other? There's no accurate proportion, but this time, the size of the remains must be beyond imagination, said Hao Qichao. Should we go over to assist? Shi Xuejin turned and asked Nie Ting. Nie Ting threw the report on the table. Assist whom? Lu Shu? You are not even as powerful as him and you want to assist him? Forget it, stop worrying about it. He can manage it by himself. I think we should worry more about the overseas organizations. Shi Xuejin thought that Nie Ting was right. He did not need to worry since Lu Shu was already a master. Shi Xuejin asked, "What are we eating tonight?" "I am planning to make sour and spicy potato and mapo tofu." Nie Ting thought about it and said, "Add a meat dish." Hao Qichao walked away silently. How did they suddenly end up on the topic of dinner? Meanwhile, Lu Shu stood in the remains and looked around. He was surrounded by yellow barren land that looked as though there had been a 1,000-year drought. The sky was blue and clear. However, it was scorching hot like the desert. Lu Shu slowly turned around. There was a huge scorpion staring at him. The scorpion was at least as big as a house. In the blink of an eye, the stinger of the scorpion pierced towards Lu Shu, and Lu Shu casually held it with his hand. Then, he moved his wrist and the scorpion was flung over and landed on its back, letting out a loud groan. The scorpion struggled to get back up, but its stinger was held by Lu Shu. The corpse dog flew out from the celestial map and penetrated the head of the scorpion. Chapter 1158, Feed on Thunderclouds. Lu Shu was not careless. He broke the tail of the scorpion to prevent it from launching a counterattack when it was on the verge of death. But Lu Shu had been overly anxious. The scorpion was already dead. He stood on the cracked ground. Suddenly, he was puzzled. This scorpion had the strength of a rank 2. Was this the average strength in the remains? When Lu Shu was in the Luniverse, he was uncertain. The danger of creatures mutating on Earth still persisted. For example, Australia was badly affected. Massive kangaroos, spiders, and anacondas were lurking about. It was hard to keep track of how many people had died. Even practitioners were not spared. This was what was happening in the modern cities. It was much worse in remote forests. Why were such frightening creatures rarely seen in the Luniverse? The most ferocious creature Lu Shu had seen was probably Gu Lingfei's Black Panther and Yu Fuyao's White Tiger, as well as Duanmu Huangqi's Blazing Cloud Foals. They all had the strength of a rank 1. But there was a similarity between these 3 creatures: they had all been domesticated. What about the other creatures? Lu Shu had entered the remote mountains in the Luniverse. King Lu Mountain was an example. Why had he not seen any ferocious beasts? The forests of the Luniverse were relatively safer than those on Earth. A scorpion in the remains had the strength of a rank 2. Lu Shu was puzzled. Had someone caught the scorpion and released it here? If the magical items had been intentionally brought in by others, it would make sense that the same happened to these creatures. The remains were more dangerous than he had imagined, but it was not yet a threat to Lu Shu. Lu Shu wanted to fly into the sky, but when he did so, a thundercloud suddenly appeared in the clear sky and attacked him. This happened very suddenly. Lu Shu did not even have the time to react. Lu Shu waved his arms. The seizing thief, covered in flames, appeared in his hands. The seizing thief was a sword that had appeared above the 4th nebula. It was the first close combat sword that the celestial map had given Lu Shu. When Lu Shu waved the sword, a blazing flame flashed past and struck the thunderbolt. Lu Shu's body felt numb. After the fire of the seizing thief and the thunderbolt clashed, it produced a massive recoil that sent Lu Shu flying to the ground. Before Lu Shu could land on the ground, another thundercloud appeared. Lu Shu tried to disperse the clouds as he landed. He furrowed his eyebrows. When he recalled the power of resonance that allowed him to fly, the thunderclouds disappeared. Something was not right. This time, Lu Shu did not use the power of resonance. He jumped into the air using his own strength. A massive crater was formed on the ground, but this time, no thunderclouds appeared, even though Lu Shu had jumped 100 meters into the sky. This was very strange. Did the thunderclouds only target the power of resonance? Furthermore, it was very powerful. What was this? Was he not allowed to fly? Lu Shu could not stand this humiliation. It had taken him great pains to train to this stage. What gave them the right to prohibit him from flying? Huh? Who were you? I, Lu Shu, am furious. Lu Shu flew into the sky once again. He had barely left the ground when a thundercloud with a radius of a few dozen kilometers appeared in the sky. There was a thunderous crash from the clouds. It was as if the clouds were laughing at Lu Shu for overestimating himself. Lu Shu calmly landed on the ground. Sorry for disturbing you. He looked around. If he could not fly, then so be it. what could he do against the rules? He was the most rule-abiding person. There was a crash in the distance. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. A black line appeared on the ground. When the line approached Lu Shu, he realized that there was a herd of wild cows. They were as large as a two-story building. They ran wildly towards him. Their stomachs were as big as drums. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. How savage was this place? What was this? He could no longer enjoy playing catch. There seemed to be 1,000 cows in the herd. Even the cracked ground seemed to be flattened. Lu Shu wanted to give way, but the cows suddenly stopped and looked at the sky. Lu Shu realized that there was a crashing sound in their stomachs. When he took a closer look, he realized that there was lightning flashing past their skin. Wait. This herd of cows was not here to attack him. They had come for the lightning. The cows quietly looked at the sky, as if they were worshipping statues. Lu Shu thought about it. Then, he flew into the sky. When the thunderclouds formed, the cows all opened their mouths and took a deep breath. The thunderclouds were sucked into the mouths of the cows. The thunderclouds flowed backwards like a vortex. The cows ate everything. When the thunderclouds entered their stomachs, the sound of thunder in their stomachs became even clearer. Lu Shu landed on the ground. After the cows were done eating, they nodded at Lu Shu. Then, they ran away. Lu Shu looked at the cows. The nod seemed to be a gesture of appreciation. They were intelligent creatures. No wonder this place was so dry. There was a herd of cows who fed on thunderclouds. But Lu Shu could finally confirm that the creatures here would not attack humans upon sight. The remains had surpassed Lu Shu's imagination, but suddenly, Lu Shu was interested. Once the thunderclouds were eaten, could Lu Shu fly? Lu Shu flew into the sky, the thunderclouds appeared, but the cows did not return. You have no conscience, leaving after you're full, muttered Lu Shu. If he could not fly, then so be it. He had accepted this reality. He tried to feel for the concentration of magical energy. This time, he could not determine exactly where the concentration of magical energy was higher. In the past, he had successfully used this method to find the core of the relics. But this time, it had failed. Lu Shu walked around aimlessly for 3 hours. Suddenly, he saw something familiar in front of him. It was a helicopter. Wait. Lu Shu did not know whether to laugh or to cry. Why are there helicopters here? The feeling of seeing a helicopter in the relics was like seeing a mistake in ancient dramas. Not only was there a helicopter, there were 4 people in the helicopter. 3 men and 1 woman were beside the helicopter. They looked helpless. Lu Shu saw a video camera on the helicopter. He walked over and asked curiously, "Are you reporters?" The beautiful female reporter heard Lu Shu's voice and suddenly looked up. Then, she wildly nodded. Yes, 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 we are reporters. Lu Shu adjusted his hair. Are you here to interview me? From Israel Moore's Distress, plus 666. From. The female reporter, Israel Moore, was about to collapse. Hello? Do you know how to get out of here? We were accidentally brought here. We are not here to interview you. Oh. Lu Shu waved his hand. Do you want to know how to get out? Yes. Israel's eyes lit up. I want to know too, said Lu Shu with a smile. From Israel Moore's Distress, plus 666. From. Their expressions instantly darkened. Evidently, these people did not recognize Lu Shu. Chapter 1159, Riding a Mule to Find a Horse. Lu Shu was in no hurry to find the relic. The remains had exceeded his imagination. He would not be able to find the relic in only 1 or 2 days. No matter whether it was the thunderclouds or the herd of cows, Lu Shu understood that he could not be rash inside the remains. Being a master did not mean that one was invincible. At least, Lu Shu did not dare to fly into the sky. Israel and the rest realized that the young Asian man in front of them was not decent. If you did not know how to go out, then so be it. Why did you have to play tricks on others? Lu Shu observed the helicopter. Were you in the sky then? Yes, said Israel. Are you a practitioner? Yes. Lu Shu nodded. There was nothing to hide. There were many practitioners in the remains. He asked, "Can your helicopter fly into the sky?" If he could not fly, but the helicopter could, it would be perfect. Speaking of which, Lu Shu had never ridden a helicopter in his life. No, the pilot shook his head. We're out of fuel. Lu Shu was slightly disappointed. Wait. Earlier, Lu Shu had taken Chen Zhuan's phone and realized that electronic equipment could not be used in the remains. A helicopter had many electronic components. How was it still able to fly in the remains? The pilot had said that they had run out of fuel, not that their electrical equipment had failed. Lu Shu took out his phone. Other than the fact that there was no signal, everything was normal. Israel desperately, "What class are you?" Israel observed Lu Shu. Asians were typical. Lu Shu had rather delicate features, but he was not particularly good-looking. He was rather normal. Lu Shu looked very young. Israel felt that Lu Shu was not a high-leveled practitioner. Lu Shu laughed cheerily. Class E, amazing, right? Israel seemed somewhat disappointed. They were ordinary people. What did they need most now? Protection. In the remains that was full of danger, the fear in the hearts of Israel and the rest was at its peak. Typically, they could seek their male colleagues for help when they encountered gangsters. But now, all of them were helpless. Before Lu Shu came, they had seen massive cows running wildly. They were very frightening, even from a distance. When Israel saw Lu Shu, she thought that they were saved. However, when Lu Shu said that he was a Class E, she was once again disappointed. Even if they were ordinary people, they knew the practitioner classes. A Class E practitioner was the second from the bottom. As a celebrity reporter, Israel had confidence in her looks and physique. This was her capital, but she felt that using it on Lu Shu had been a waste. It was the magically rich era, but practitioners still chased Israel although she was an ordinary person. The weakest was a Class D. Anyone below Class D did not have the confidence to speak to her. Although there was a gap between the cultivation realm and the world of ordinary people, males still focused on appearances, not on whether she could train. Thus, beautiful ladies still had capital. As long as the social order did not collapse, they could still freely choose who they wanted and did not want to be with. Israel also frequently received information and news about the cultivation realm as she had suitors from the cultivation realm. News about the cultivation realm was the hottest news among ordinary people. It was like the dramas aired during prime time and those aired in the afternoon. They were on completely different levels. Of course, the information she received was limited. After all, she did not know that the person in front of her was the 9th heavenly king. Footage of Lu Shu was rare. This was because the heavenly network had intentionally protected him. At that moment, Israel was still disappointed. She did not expect her luck to be this bad. There were many practitioners, but she had run into a weak practitioner. Lu Shu looked at Israel and the rest. Wait and see if anyone else walks past. If someone else comes, ask them how to get out. I will take my leave. Not long after, Lu Shu turned back and asked, "Are all of you ordinary people?" "Every one of you?" "Yes." Israel absent-mindedly nodded. "Oh." Then, Lu Shu continued walking. He asked this question as he had realized that the four of them were together. They had not been randomly allocated. Only practitioners and metahumans seemed to be randomly allocated. Before he could walk much further, Israel suddenly ran to Lu Shu and grabbed his arm. "Please take us in. When we get out, we will thank you." Lu Shu was dumbfounded. He realized that Israel had a glorified identity. She had not realized this when she came to the remains. But she did not understand that once she came to the remains, her identity in the outside world was not important. Even the social order was non-existent here. Once ordinary people entered this place, the countdown timer on their lives had started. This was the end of the world for ordinary people. Now, Israel's fear had beaten her pride. However, she wanted to follow Lu Shu only for now. When they encountered stronger metahumans, she could ask them for help. This was like riding a mule to find a horse. But Lu Shu had come here to find the truth. He could not bring a group of ordinary people and walk around. Israel saw that Lu Shu was deep in thought. She suddenly realized that the young man had not looked at her appearance and physique. She panicked. "If you protect us, we will give you compensation when we get out." Lu Shu said with a sense of justice, "I cannot just leave you here. That is not human."
Ha! 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 Ha!
"You have misunderstood. Follow me, but I will not take breaks in between." Israel was dumbfounded. Lu Shu was a few dozen meters away. He turned back and realized that they had not moved. He waved and shouted, "What are you doing there? Hurry up." Lu Shu would not abandon these people here. He was selfish, but not cold-blooded. Lu Shu had decided that since they would definitely encounter other practitioners, he would hand over Israel and the rest to them. Would his compensation be shared? Or would Israel pay more? Israel gritted her teeth and caught up. Lu Shu looked at her outfit. She was wearing a tight pencil skirt and 8 centimeters high heels. Lu Shu shook his head and said, "Do you have any flats? If not, we will change out those shoes if we find someone dead. You won't be able to walk far in these shoes." Israel could not stand it. "Why are you so cruel? Are you treating the lives of others lightly?" Lu Shu laughed. "Is that cruel? Welcome to the remains." Chapter 1160, The First Night. Israel hated Lu Shu's tone as she felt that she had been treated lightly by Lu Shu. If they were not in the remains, even practitioners who were at a higher rank would not dare to treat her lightly. Therefore, Israel had already made up her mind, she would leave Lu Shu alone once she finds new practitioners. She was secretly thinking if the Class E practitioner needed protection from someone she had found. However, as expected by Lu Shu, before Israel could find someone to protect her, she was tortured to death by her high heels. The ground in the remains was uneven and they had to jump over some obstacles or ravines. She was committing suicide slowly by wearing an 8-centimeter high heels. However, because Lu Shu had pissed her off earlier, she continued to bear the pain until now. Lu Shu thought that it was unnecessary as she was the one suffering. Lu Shu was a pragmatic person. If others gave him suggestions, even if their tone was bad, he would choose the best option for himself. Indeed, they saw 2 bodies on the way. The corpses had teeth marks and there were huge beastly footprints beside the corpses. Lu Shu felt that the creatures in this remain was especially powerful. Goodness knew what creatures did the 2 of them meet in their past life. Their shoes are complete. Although they are males, the left foot is not too big. You should be able to fit into the shoe if you tighten the shoelaces, at least, it will be better than high heels, said Lu Shu. Israel did not say anything. Her face was pale and her partner was gagging after seeing the dead bodies. Indeed, most of the people on Earth had never seen such a bloody scene before. Many people thought that gagging was a reflex due to disgust, but instead, it was a reflex due to an intense emotional trigger. Lu Shu shrugged. Too bad if she did not want to change her shoe, anyway, it was not Lu Shu who suffered. However, Israel was indeed stronger than her partner. Her partner had gagged, but she did not. She was rather strong. Don't vomit too much, Lu Shu said emotionlessly. After all, there's no food here. What happens if you vomit too much and feel hungry? Israel was stunned. How disgusting. From Israel Moore's Distress, plus 666. From. Lu Shu continued walking ahead. Israel's partner said softly, just change, if not, you won't be able to continue walking. However, Israel still did not speak. She turned her head and took a few steps and suddenly sat down and started crying with her hands over her face. While crying, she looked at Lu Shu's back. However, he did not turn back at all. At this moment, a pile of black scorpions crawled out from the dead body and began to feed on the corpse. Israel and her partner were so shocked that they hurriedly caught up with Lu Shu. Lu Shu turned and looked at the two bodies. No wonder, they were attacked by scorpions, and the scorpions laid their eggs in the bodies. In the past, he was wondering why the creatures did not feed on the human bodies after killing them. The reason was to leave them as food for their descendants. I give you money, take out your shoe and pass it to me, said Israel as she walked behind Lu Shu. Do you not like money? I will pay you 100,000 US dollars for your shoes. Lu Shu was stunned. You have too much money? You didn't want the free shoes, but you have to buy mine? Yes, I have too much money, Israel said while gritting her teeth. Lu Shu looked at Israel's partner. Is she famous? Nobody knew why Lu Shu asked that question. Israel sneered, why did you ask? Are you pretending that I am a stranger? Am I not famous enough? Oh, I was afraid that you won't be able to pay, explained Lu Shu patiently. If you are very famous, then I won't be afraid. Israel whipped out her checkbook from her bag and wrote a check before passing it to Lu Shu. As long as you can make it out alive, you can take the 2 million US dollars for protecting us and 100,000 for your shoes. Deal? Lu Shu said immediately. Israel suddenly felt that she had suffered a loss. Before Lu Shu replied, she had always thought that she was at an advantageous position. However, after Lu Shu replied, Israel suddenly felt that it was the biggest mistake she had ever made in her life. From Israel Moore's Distress, plus 699. Lu Xiaoyu had once said, Lu Shu's most powerful capability was to be able to make dog shit regret after stepping on it. Unfortunately, Israel had not heard this sentence before. When Lu Shu took the check from Israel's tight grip, he suddenly realized that foreigners' habit with the check was pretty good. After confirming the other party's identity, one could immediately take the check and save the trouble. To be honest, Lu Shu was not very sure of how to use the check. However, without hesitation, he still took the check and took off his shoes before passing them to Israel. He had many pairs of shoes in his seal of lands, all prepared by Lu Xiaoyu. However, he did not intend to change into them. Firstly, he did not want others to know about his invisible storage equipment. Secondly, he did not want to ruin the shoes in the remains. Israel changed into Lu Shu's shoes behind him. Lu Shu's shoe size was not big. Although it was size 40 and slightly big for Israel, it was way better than her high heels. After taking off her high heels, Israel instantly felt as though she was in heaven. She looked at Lu Shu and his bare feet and felt slightly better. However, Israel felt that Lu Shu was really weird. He sold his shoes for money even though Israel's tone was rather insulting. How shameless. The sky darkened. Lu Shu said after looking up at the sky, there could be changes in the night. Let's find a place to camp and make plans after the changes take place. Israel and the rest did not stop him. After walking for a full day, they were exhausted. At this moment, even Lu Shu did not know that the remains had shrouded an unexpectedly huge area. From the incomplete official calculation, the remains had shrouded tens of thousands of people and 99% of them were ordinary people. If Lu Shu knew about it, he would be shocked. If so many people had entered the remains and they only bumped into 2 bodies after a day of walking, how big was the remains? Unfortunately, Lu Shu and the rest did not know. After that night and the sky brightened up, Israel mocked while holding in her hunger. Didn't you say that there would be changes in the night? Why wasn't there any changes? You only heard about it, right?
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on the show. Try to look to the heavens.